you, Brad and City of Fremantle, for the opportunity to speak to everyone tonight. I work in Western Australia for the Alliance for a Clean Environment. I'm the Senior Researcher nationally for the National Toxics Network, and I work globally with IPEN as their Global Mercury Policy Adviser. We work on a whole range of issues related to the Stockholm Convention and more recently the Minamata Convention on mercury pollution, which is I attended in Japan for the initial signing of. All of these are issues that are relevant to waste management in Western Australia, particularly matters relating to the Stockholm Convention around persistent organic pollutants, which can become a problematic part of our waste stream treatment. More recently, I was in the Philippines speaking to congressmen there about a ban that they've instituted on the incineration of any type of waste and their zero waste programs that they're initiating at Bangarai or village level, which is having incredible success there in certain areas where they've implemented it. Those are just the various tags and addresses for the organisations that I work for, if anyone's interested in looking further into the sorts of activities that we conduct. Back into Western Australia, we have a problem. We are the largest producer by state of waste per capita in the country. These are older figures from 2006-07, but put together by the Australian Bureau of Statistics. You'd think we would have improved by then, but unfortunately on a per capita basis we've actually increased, and we're now around 2,658 kilos per person. So in terms of consumption and generation of waste, we're actually going backwards. Recycling, back in 2006-07, just to show you the trends, Western Australia was again at the very lowest rate of recycling anywhere in the country. Again, you would think we've improved quite dramatically since then, but according to ABS data, we're up around, I think, as Tim mentioned, around 30% or so across the state. Certain areas are doing better than others. That means that we're sitting quite a lot below the national average of 51% diversion rates from landfill. So as an advanced industrialised country, don't we have this all under control? And if not, why not? Well, part of our problem is that our landfills are reaching capacity in many areas and they're also leaking. That's Red Hill landfill up in on 2J Road on the way to 2J, and that's Cebu landfill, which I visited recently. The difference between the two is largely around management and the expense of the infrastructure. And the Red Hill facility also has a range of liners, gas extraction and leachate extraction. However, the Cebu landfill continues to leak into the local marine environment and causes many problems there. The Red Hill landfill also has recently had a range of leaks leaking into the John Forrest National Park, and they've also had a leak from their hazardous waste cells. So we haven't really got the concept and the technology of landfill under control at all. We're running out of space, people are looking for options. What Western Australia really needs is a mandatory zero waste program, such as they have in San Francisco, where we really start to pin down issues of avoidance, reducing, reusing, recycling. Composting is a critical factor. We're not doing enough of it. The SMRC has taken the lead on the composting technology, and I think they need to expand that. And I think we should be looking at a much broader range of composting activities throughout all the regional councils, combined with technology like anaerobic digestion, which does generate energy, and it also generates an organic digestate compost, which can be applied in farming, agricultural settings and so on, and can actually be mixed in with other compost. San Francisco is leading the way in terms of the Western world. Their 3-bin system and their financial incentives and their outreach programs are second to none. They've exceeded, I've already updated the figures, so they've already exceeded the 80% diversion rate there, and a lot of their work is done with composting and working with local restaurants and local householders. And that's the model we should really be applying in Western Australia. We can achieve this, but we can't achieve it if we lock ourselves into burning waste for the next 30 years. That stifles innovation. It doesn't allow flexibility in our waste management systems. You'll be locked into effectively put or pay contracts or various other contracts that will become an economic burden over time. And that's a real issue for ratepayers because once you're locked in, the costs can escalate and ratepayers don't have a lot of control over that. San Francisco deliberately avoided incineration because it was aware of the other problems that are happening around America with waste incinerators, such as in Harrisburg, where basically the town went into bankruptcy, the city of Harrisburg, because of its incinerator upgrades and retrofits that they had to apply in that case. And the Detroit incinerator has also contributed heavily to their bankruptcy proceedings with over $1.2 billion in debt due to air control upgrades over time. So San Francisco chose cool technologies, which are things like composting and anaerobic digestion, instead of hot technologies like incineration. So why should we avoid waste incinerators? And it's important that people realise that pyrolysis, gasification, plasma arc and combustion are all incinerator technologies under European Union definitions and under US EPA definitions. People will tell you they're not, but they are. The problems that we've identified over the last 20 years, including with the new incinerator technologies, is that they actually waste resources and destroy the embedded energy. So if you're burning a paper cup, you're getting the calorific value, the kilojoule value, but you're actually losing all of that extraction, production, refining, transport, all the energy that's embedded in that item to put it on the shelf in the first place. By taking the loop back through reuse and recycling, you actually retain a lot of that embedded energy instead of it just going up in smoke. So that's a critical issue, especially in terms of greenhouse gas emissions and carbon emissions and sustainability. So there's been a long and inglorious record of pollution of the atmosphere from incinerators, and they also require landfill for their toxic ash components, the ash that drops to the bottom, and in some cases they might call it things like char or biochar through pyrolysis and gasification. As I said, it's largely it stifles technological innovation because of the long contracts you have to set up between local communities or regional councils and the incinerator companies. They're not necessarily climate friendly, and they also take resources in terms of public subsidies and grants from real renewable energy projects like solar, wind and so on, wave power. Just a quick comparison. This is comparing the energy savings from recycling in terms of gigajoules a tonne with energy output from incineration. That's the calorific value I was talking about, and that's the actual embedded energy saved through recycling. And just to give you an example, for PET bottles, your drink water bottles, you're saving 26 times more energy than you're creating in terms of burning that material. So there's vast energy savings involved in terms of being climate friendly through recycling. That's a combined ash landfill in Massachusetts. That's the sort of ash you get from incinerators. Obviously not every incinerator will have a pile like that, but that's what you have to landfill. There's no getting away from it. We hear a lot of stories about a glittering array of products coming out the back end of an incinerator. It can be turned into road base, and I've heard kitchen bench tops and bricks and all sorts of things, but that's not necessarily the case, and I know the unions have a lot of issues with this type of material because of the entrained heavy metal contaminants and persistent organic pollutants, and they don't want their workers exposed to that when they're applying road base and so on. They're extremely expensive to build, very capital intensive compared to all other forms of energy generation. You can see there, it's not just the cost of building, it's the cost of maintaining and operating them over time. And one thing that's not included in there is the actual upgrades, because as scientific standards change and they find that we can breathe in less lead, less zinc, less chromium, less dioxin, the air quality standards go down as the regulators bring those numbers down. It happens a lot slower in Western Australia than a lot of places, but that's the theory. And what happens is you have to retrofit the incinerators with pollution control equipment. It's extremely expensive. That gives you a better idea of the variable operation and maintenance costs, and that does include those kinds of retrospective cost issues that you have to deal with. You don't have to deal with those with true renewable energies. So anyway, yep, 2. There's also the dirtiest form of energy production in terms of greenhouse gas emissions, comparing trash incineration with coal, oil and biomass. And in terms of the number of times more polluting incineration is compared to coal, you've got your trash incineration in the red, the coal in the blue. And I don't think many people realise that these are the sorts of issues you'll actually be wrestling with in terms of the triple bottom line, social impacts and so forth. So we also hear the waste myths that we're too far from the recycling markets overseas. San Francisco sends their material to China. I've just used Beijing as a dot point, but we're a lot closer in Perth, and most of the recycling in Guangzhou province and other areas in the south of China are a lot closer to us than San Francisco. Some of the solutions, I'll just zip through these, are basically about better industrial design. We've got to stop making things that we can't recycle properly. We need more innovative examples like this, where these guys are turning mushroom mycelium into packaging that can be composted. They reckon you can eat it, but it tastes like crap. But you know, at least there's something you can do, that you can compost, you can mulch it, you can do other things. And that's the end of my 8.5 minutes.